Okay, Chair, we are now being live streamed and being recorded. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Good evening and welcome to the virtual meeting of East Devon District Council on the 20th of April 2022. I'm your Chair, Councillor Ian Thomas. I'd also like to welcome viewers of our live stream on the Council's YouTube channel. Could I remind everyone that due to concerns relating to COVID risk, our Council's delegated much of its decision-making power to senior officers for the period to the 11th of May 2022. Consequently, this evening's meeting will be on a consultative basis only. However, we will work as closely as possible to normal procedural rules as detailed in our Constitution. Where our meeting would normally have decided a matter, it will now make recommendation to a senior officer. That officer will then take our recommendation into account when making their decision. May I remind colleagues that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We reserve the right to disconnect any disruptive participant. If there's a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us whilst we try to reconnect. Should we not be successful within 15 minutes, we'll consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. As this is a large meeting, it's particularly important colleagues ensure microphones are muted when not in use to avoid disturbance from background noise. If you wish to speak, please raise your yellow electronic hand and wait to be called. Please keep points short and don't interrupt while others are speaking. Our full agenda is available online at www.eastdevon.gov.uk. We're now going to start the meeting with a roll call of members present. When you hear your name, please unmute your microphone and confirm by saying present. Over to you, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Allen. Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Arnott.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Barrow.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Bickley.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Blakey.
Present.
Councillor Bloxham.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Bonetta.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Brown.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Bruce.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Cahill. Councillor Chamberlain. Councillor Chapman. Councillor Chubb.
Hello, yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Coleman. Councillor Davey.
Present, thank you.
Councillor
Sorry,
Desarum.
Sue. Councillor Coleman asked me to offer his apologies. He'll be late just now. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Councillor Dent.
Oh, I was going to say present. Thank you, Sue. Councillor Desarum.
Councillor Faithful.
Oh, present. I'm present as well. Councillor Dent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Gardner.
Present.
Councillor Gazzard.
Apologies for Steve.
I beg your pardon.
Steve apologised. He's at hospital this evening.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Hartnell.
Present, Sue.
Councillor Hawkins.
Present.
Councillor Haywood.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Ingham. Councillor Jackson.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Johns.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Young.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Kemp.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Key.
Present, Sue.
Councillor Lawrence.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Ledger.
Present, thank you, Sue. Sue, I will have to leave at 6:30. I'm clerking tonight, unfortunately. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Loudon.
I'm here, thanks, Sue.
Councillor Manley.
Present.
Councillor McCollum.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Miller. Oh, just coming in. I'll let him get in. Councillor Moulding.
Present.
Councillor Parr.
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Pepper. Councillor Pook. Councillor Pratt.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Ranger.
Present.
Councillor Rickson.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Rowland.
Present, thanks, Sue.
Councillor Rylance.
Present.
Councillor Skinner.
Present, Sue. And I'm sorry, I meant to apologise for Councillor Ingham as well.
Okay, thank you.
The way.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Thomas.
Present.
Councillor Twiss.
Yes, Sue, present, thank you.
Councillor Wibley.
Present, thank you, Sue.
Councillor Woodward.
Present, thank you.
Councillor Ragg.
Present.
Councillor Chris Wright.
Present.
Councillor Tom Wright.
Present, thank you, Sue.
And you missed me out, Sue. Councillor Hughes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your
That's all
pardon.
right.
Thank
Let you
you. Thank you very much.
Not trying to give Stuart a message there, Sue, no? Anyway, I can confirm that the meeting is comfortably quorate. Thank you very much, Sue. Agenda item 1 is public speaking. I have no members of the public registered to speak. Is that still the case, Sue?
It is, Chair, yes.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 2 are minutes of the previous council meetings. If you've any comments on the minutes of full council held on the 21st or 23rd of February or extraordinary meeting of the council on 22nd of March, would you please raise your electronic hand? I have Councillor Ranger. Val. Councillor Ranger.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. This is just a correction to the full council minutes of the 21st of February. It's under the public speaking section, section 59. And I'll just go back to what it says. So it's the second to last paragraph.
We seem to have lost Councillor Ranger.
From the bottom of that, it says she stated this crossing and replaced with in Newton Popple.
Thank you. Did we get that okay, Sue?
I think I did, Chair. Thank you.
Related to replacing this crossing with in Newton Poppleford, it's explaining the location of the fatal accidents in the area. Councillor Faithful, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I was advised that the real meeting in Exmouth was just going to be a little more than a token meeting. By all accounts of the minutes, it was more than that, and there was quite a large turnout down there. I just feel, if we're going to have a full council meeting, we should recognise it as a full council meeting with full people there, which is virtually what there was over 40 members at that meeting at Exmouth. So, I think if we're going to do that, we should encourage as many people as possible to be there and do it properly. Thank you, Chair.
Noted, Peter. I think it's nice to see as many people present at any of our meetings, to be totally honest, particularly those directly involved. I believe, was that the budget meeting, Sue?
Yes, it was.
Oh, that explains it. The budget meeting had to be held in person, as you know, because of the legal position on that one. Anyway, moving on from that, In the absence of any other speakers, could I invite members to vote for or against receiving and noting those minutes, please? Green ticks for, red crosses against.
Benefit of the public, voting is underway. I don't think it's quite finished. Okay, Chair, I have 44 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm that those minutes are received and noted. Agenda item 3 is apologies. I have 3 additional apologies to those that have been notified earlier. I've got Councillor Ian Hall, Councillor Mike Howe, and Councillor Paul Jarvis. If we could add those, please, Sue, and I'll invite any other apologies, please. No? Good. Moving on. Declarations of interest is agenda item 4. Perhaps members could either declare any declarations of interest now, or if during the meeting it becomes apparent they need to make a declaration, could you please remember to state your declaration, including which agenda item your declaration relates to, and if it's a personal or a prejudicial interest. Thank you very much. I'm not seeing any declarations now, so whoop. Councillor Faithful. You're muted, Peter.
Only based on your report, I assume you're going to give us about Ukraine refugees. I'm a member of Ottery Refugee Response Group. Thank you, Chair.
That's noted. Thank you very much, Peter. That's within Chairman's announcements, Chair's announcements. Again, I've got Councillor Hayward. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 10. Which is the appointment of independent community representatives on the Housing Review Board. One of the 2 individuals is very well known to me, and so on that I'll declare a disclosable personal interest, and I'll be abstaining from the vote when we come to it.
Thank you very much. It's flowing in now. Councillor Bailey, Jess.
Hi, I just wanted to declare a personal interest as a Devon County Councillor for all items on the agenda. Thank you.
Right. Councillor Jackson, Sarah.
Thank you. Similar to Councillor Hayward's, I know one of the independent people who has been put forward to fill the role on Housing Review Board, and encouraged him to submit an application based on his experience. So I will also be abstaining from that vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Sarah. We've finished there on declarations. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. I've got no items to be dealt with in that way. Agenda item 6, announcements from the chair and leader. What I'm going to do is I'm going to firstly 2 things. I would just like to confirm that given the views of members who attended the meeting on the 23rd of February, we agreed that we would hold the annual council meeting in May at the Ocean Suite in Exmouth. Unfortunately, the Ocean venue is not available for May 11th, the date we originally scheduled for the meeting. It was agreed to move it to the following week on Thursday, the 19th of May. Can I go to a separate announcement, please, which on a very important subject, close to, I know, a number of our hearts. Is there an update on the Ukrainian refugee situation in our council area? East Devon's been working collaboratively with Devon County Council and other Devon districts to deliver the role that government has prescribed for local authorities in the effort to provide safe refuge for people fleeing the invasion in Ukraine. This work centres on checking the suitability of properties offered by sponsor and host families, safeguarding checks on host households, administering subsistence payments to refugees and sponsor households, and welcome, support and integration for refugees. We were originally advised that 37 sponsor households were located in East Devon, and we know that this number will increase over time. To date, our private sector housing team has 50 booked accommodation checks, 18 inspections have already been completed and have all passed the suitability tests. We know of 2 sponsors who have no guests and may be available for rematching or move on schemes. Alongside this, our revenues and benefits team have 2 interim payment requests for Ukrainian guests. This relates to the £200 payment they're entitled to receive on arrival. We're exploring options for commissioning a support service for Ukrainian refugees, possibly working with neighbouring authorities and/or local voluntary, community and social enterprise groups. Devon County Council is undertaking safeguarding checks and making good progress. Yesterday, we received a letter from the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, the Right Honourable Michael Gove MP, recognising that the war in Ukraine produces new pressures for local authorities and reminding us of the help being sought. We're advised that the Homes for Ukraine scheme has seen more than 55,000 visa applications, and government is currently expecting 800 to 1,000 arrivals in the UK each day from those fleeing the war. This includes a vulnerable cohort of women and children and their elderly relatives, many of them traumatized and with deep concerns for family members left in Ukraine. I'm sure we'd all like to endorse and thank John Golding for his report there. And I've got Alistair Bruce.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quickie on the Ukrainian refugee subject. I'm getting feedback from one of my ward villages where they are hosting a family, and I've raised this with a colleague at County Council because it does seem to be a somewhat confusing picture from the host's point of view when they're trying to help the refugees with dealing with the finances, also housing and stuff like that. So basically, this is in the form of a kind of a feedback into the system, purely for district. Now, I haven't actually looked at the website myself, but so I'm simply passing on information that I've gleaned this afternoon, that it does seem to be that they are struggling to work out which places to apply and getting a bit confused between county and district. So if anything can be done through the officers to make that a little clearer, I think it would be much appreciated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Alistair. I'll highlight this to John Golding and refer him to the section of the recording that you've just made. Councillor Faithful, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. I was asked of the, funding that's for Devon County, the 10,000 per refugee, will any of that funding or any other funding become available to the voluntary groups around the community who are supporting us as a councils or Team Devon or whatever? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm not in a position to answer that personally. I don't know whether Councillor Rowlands, Jack, are you aware of any answer there, or shall I refer it to John Golding?
I think at this stage it'd be best to refer it to John Golding. I'm not aware of any other news on that subject, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jack. Oh, and like magic, there appears John Golding. I'll tell you what, it's very impressive, this system, isn't it? John, perhaps you could answer Peter's question for us.
Yeah, I'll try, Chair. So we still are waiting details of how the government funding is going to be distributed. But as Councillor Faithful mentioned, there is £10,500 per refugee that will be available either directly to us or, as we suspect, to Devon County Council. And we do intend to use some of that money for this wraparound support service that you just mentioned, to commission that service to help welcome and settle refugees in the district. So the intention is, yes, we'll use some of that money. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, John. Much appreciated. Councillor Rylance. Eleanor.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I need to make a declaration of interest, very, very personal interest. I didn't actually know the contents of your statement, but I have signed up to become a Homes for Ukraine host family. And what I want to say really is to congratulate our local authorities. I am one of those people who applied very, very early, and so I've already been DBS checked, I have my home checked and passed, and all I'm waiting on now is the visa, and the visa is the bottleneck at the moment. I think there are some significant problems within the Home Office with handling visas, and I expect that once they've worked out what the problem is, then we will get a surge of people coming. So we need to be ready for that. There are lots of people who applied weeks ago, and I'm among that number, 4 weeks ago, still waiting for our guests' visas. And there seems to be some kind of problem with the very early visas. But once they get to the bottom of that, I expect that all those people will arrive very quickly, because conditions in Poland and Moldova and Romania are not great, because there are so many people who are displaced there now, and pressure on accommodation is immense. So I just wanted to really thank all the officers who've been involved in the process up to this point, and reassure anybody who wants to start this that actually all of that part of the system is unlocked by you applying via Homes for Ukraine. So the first thing to do is to apply via Homes for Ukraine, and once you have found a guest, as I understand, actually maybe not actually, maybe it's the Homes for Ukraine thing. When you sign up as a host, the Home Office alerts the local authority, so you don't need to do the rest of it yourself. You just need to do the Homes for Ukraine bit, and then the rest of it is handled by the local authorities, who are extremely efficient. We're very lucky. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. John, have you any comment on that, or just to note it?
I think just to note at the moment, Chair, and as you mentioned earlier, the figure we're expecting 51 now families coming over for hosts in the East Devon area, and I suspect that number will steadily rise as the scheme becomes better known. So we're quickly trying as quickly as we possibly can going through these accommodation checks to make sure that the properties are suitable for the families arriving. As Councillor Ryland says, we suspect that they will start to come thick and fast as the Home Office gets through the visa checks. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks, John. If you could pass on our thanks to all your colleagues who are working on this project. It's extremely important. Well, it's frankly outranks everything else at the moment. Councillor Twist, Phil.
Thank you very much. Just for the avoidance of any doubt, I am the finance portfolio holder at DCC, but I won't be making any contribution to this debate, even if I was able to. I've nothing to add to it anyway, but just for the avoidance of any doubt. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. No doubt Devon County Council will be making a contribution though, which is great, working with us. Moving on, agenda item 7, sorry, I should have asked the leader. Leader, have you any announcements?
No, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 7, confidential and exempt items. No items have been recommended by officers to be dealt with as confidential or exempt. On to agenda item 8, questions asked by members of the council under rules 9.2 and 9.5. We've received 3 questions, and all have been responded to in writing and published prior to the meeting. Questions were submitted by Councillor Cathy Gardner and Councillor Paul Miller. Firstly, Cathy, do you have any supplementary question?
Yes, I do, Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank the portfolio holder, Councillor Hayward, for answering my questions so comprehensively. And I'm really pleased that that information is now in the public domain to answer questions from my residents. My concern remains, though, that it would be an absolute disaster for Sidmouth if Rockfish weren't able to progress, because the previous owners of the drill hall just hold things up. This is a dreadful situation to be in, having waited so long for the drill hall to be refurbished and brought back into use. And if there's anything that ward members can do to help, then I'd like Councillor Hayward to let us know. And also, can I ask Councillor Hayward if he will please keep us informed of anything that happens over the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cathy. Councillor Hayward, Paul, would you like to respond?
I'll be delighted to, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Gardner, for your question. And I too share your concerns that, due to circumstances somewhat outside of our control, the the welcome to Rockfish to Sidmouth, which would be an immeasurable boost to the town, has been delayed. You've seen the reply from officers. Unfortunately, there have been some legal hiccups, but we are trying to iron them through as quick as we can. But certainly, if I hear anything, yourself and the other ward members will be the first to know, because I appreciate you're the boots on the ground. You get asked regularly by your constituents. So if I know, you'll know, and together we can all push forward and make this happen for the benefit of Sidmouth's economy. Thank you, Councillor Gardner.
Thank you very much, Paul. And Councillor Miller, do you have any supplementaries for either of your two questions, please?
First one to the leader, please.
Thank you. Could you continue?
Thank you. Yeah, I hope the leader has guessed what I'm now going to ask him and has prepared accordingly, even though I will preempt my supplementary by saying I don't blame him for the cause of this situation at all. The public row over the Strand in Exmouth was a really regrettable one for everybody involved in it. To broadly work out an estimated cost to the taxpayer this council paid to the Torbay Development Agency to carry out 20 hours worth of work on these negotiations with local businesses in the Strand, there is a public benefit from knowing the overall fixed rate he refers to in his written answer, but then does not explicitly reveal. So please, what is it? Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to take a sneaky drink then. Leader, if you want to respond, please.
Thanks, Councillor Miller. Yes, so obviously in composing the answer, I depended upon Mr. Child, the officer concerned on that. And I think what was interesting about the answer is that it did explain to the people of Exmouth, really, that one of the reasons that a number of them had actually simply refused at the height of this to engage with TDA as our agents in this matter was that they didn't understand that they were people who'd been working for us for 10 years. So I'm happy to depend upon what Mr. Child has advised, that it's an ongoing relationship. He's mentioning 20 hours worth of work. I can't give Councillor Miller, obviously, a pro rata rate for that, but I'm happy to write to Mr. Child and copy Councillor Miller in and see if we can get somewhere near that. But I would add, I don't think it's a cause célèbre. I think from my reading of what happened there, they were doing their absolute best to try and get this sorted out. And I don't think they did a bad job. What I think wasn't understood in Exmouth was that for 2 years, because of COVID, the traders were allowed to use that public space. And it is public, but it comes at a cost to the public as well, and to us as the council, for £100 a year. Now, if they didn't make an extremely healthy profit out of the last 2 years doing that, even in the terrible pandemic circumstances, I would be astonished. Obviously, it couldn't be left at that. And what the council had to do professionally was to, through their agents, through TDA, was to assess what the real rate would be, all things being equal. And they corresponded that to the people who were interested in taking it on. The timing of it all was very unfortunate. You know, everything should probably have been done on both sides about 2 or 3 months before, and it wasn't. But I think the outcome is a happy one. But as I said to Councillor Miller, thank you for the question. I will email Mr. Child and you. And it's a question of how comfortable I think officers feel about the commercial confidentiality around that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader. Is this supplementary to question 3, Paul? No? Lovely. Okay, we'll move on. Agenda item 9, reports from Cabinet and Council's committees and questions on those reports. Could I receive the minutes of the following committees and invite members to vote in favour or against passing for approval to officers as appropriate where there are recommendations, or receiving and noting when there are no recommendations. Recommendations are summarised on page 29 to 31. Firstly, Leader, 2nd of March.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Just like to put forward the minutes of the Cabinet meeting of the 2nd of March 2022, minute numbers 172 to 188. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I please ask members to vote in favour with your green tick or against with your red cross, receiving and noting these minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 37 votes in favour, 38 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm that the minutes are received and noted. Next, Leader, are minutes of Cabinet on the 30th of March 2022. And in fact, we have a called minute here, which is minute number 209, unlocking the delivery of Cranbrook Town Centre. So could I ask Councillor Lawrence, Richard, please?
Thank you, Chair. I've called this minute in relation to a question which I actually raised at the Cabinet meeting. I was allowed to speak even though I'm not a Cabinet member. But I felt that the response to my question was inadequate and was not actually shown in the minutes. The question relates to section 2, which is the proposal to give E.ON £1 million towards the rollout of the district heating system at Cranbrook. Although I was not a council member at the time of the original plan, I understand that in order to achieve a low carbon heating and hot water system for Cranbrook, each property would be connected to the district heating system provided by E.ON and powered by burning wood pellets. For some reason, the wood pellet thing went out of the window, it wasn't possible, and so they decided to fuel the system temporarily with gas. We're now 10 years down the road and the E.ON district heating system is still powered by gas, which is totally unsustainable and goes totally against the council's plans regarding climate change. What I wanted to know was, why are we as a council rewarding E.ON with £1 million not to give us the service we originally signed up to? And why are the residents of Cranbrook so concerned about the cost of heating and hot water over which they have little or no control? And what is the timescale to rectify these problems? I don't think we will be acting unreasonably to expect some positive response from E.ON before we pay out the money. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. I will get to the leader in a second, but I've got Mark Williams. Mark.
So it was hopefully to answer the detail of the question that Councillor Lawrence has raised. So the £1 million that was referred to isn't a grant, if you like, to E.ON. The £1 million is a contingency sum that has been allocated should it be necessary in due course if an application that's to be made by E.ON to the government's Green Heat Network Fund isn't successful. And that's an application that is open from late May. And secondly, also, if the government doesn't offer business rate relief through the National Programme for District Heating. So you are right in the sense that it has been a disappointment that the original intentions regarding the district heating network weren't able to be achieved in terms of it being powered by biofuels fundamentally, so it has become a gas one. But going forward, the expectation is that through the government's new grant schemes, we can ensure that the district heating network and all the areas that it serves, which will be in addition to Cranbrook, will become zero carbon. And we have already banked a substantial sum of money from the government in terms of their support for that programme. So the remainder, the residual, is what's being sought through additional government funding. I think we are reasonably confident that that will be forthcoming, but in terms of taking the project forward, we had to make a contingency provision, and that's what that sum is for fundamentally.
Thank you very much, Mark. Leader, would you like to add anything to that at this point?
I don't think I would. I know Councillor Ledger badly needs to go. Councillor Ledger, is there sort of through you, Chair, like 15 seconds you wish to add on that? It's hard to say how you could improve on that answer. So I think Councillor Ledger.
Through you, Chair. Mark put it perfectly and I couldn't put it any better. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Famous. Thank you very much. Richard, Councillor Lawrence, does that cover off your question?
It does to a certain degree, but there's no sort of timing involved. I would really like to know after 10 years when they do plan to follow down the route that they originally planned. And Mark Williams did refer to the green heat policy. Well, it can't be green heat if it's powered by gas from Russia. I mean, we're being held to ransom here, and people will have to pay the costs of whatever it costs to keep their houses warm. I just think that we're missing a trick here. That we should. I realise that the £1 million is a contingency figure, but I just think that we should exert more pressure on E.ON to follow up with their original plans. I mean, 10 years is plenty time enough to sort that out. I'm sure it is. But thank you anyway. I've had my say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I've got Councillor Hayward. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Just an observation, if I may, to thank Councillor Lawrence for his contribution, which I recognise. Yes, it's not good enough, but what we're struggling with is government policy that, for example, in Hawkchurch, within my parish, allows gas-fired and diesel-fired battery units to trade in the margins in the energy market to be classified as green energy, and that therefore they get foisted upon communities of green and pleasant lands, agricultural fields, who find it very hard to push against them because it's classed as green. So I applaud Councillor Lawrence for bringing it forward. It needs a demonstrative approach upwards through our MPs. Let them reclassify what green energy really is, because most people would agree with you, Councillor Lawrence. Burning fossil fuels is not green, but through quirks and through lobbying, it's allowed to be designated as green, and it's not on. And so, well done, Councillor Lawrence. I agree with you. But yeah, we thank you, Mark, for the explanation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Arnott. Paul.
Yes, I'd like to echo Councillor Hayward's thanks to Councillor Lawrence as well. I remember when I first moved here 20-something years ago, and a very wise primary school headmaster, when I was trying to get a project going, he said, "There's time, Paul, and there's Colleton time." I now realise that there's time, and there's also the development of Cranbrook time. I'm delighted with where it's going at the moment. I think we've had a breakthrough. I do think probably I should just correct for the minutes, possibly, Chair. The United Kingdom isn't actually dependent upon Russian gas supply. We're either getting it from domestic production or, frankly, most of it's coming from Norway. So I wouldn't want Councillor Lawrence to worry about that overnight, that we are inadvertently supporting the activities of President Putin. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I'm going to throw it back to you, Leader, to move your minutes, please. Oh, sorry, I've just got my apologies. If I can hang on, Councillor Arnott. Councillor Bakey jumped in at the end. Kevin.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a little bit of information to add to the comments that have been made by the speakers so far, which relates to the economics of the current position. The main reason that there wasn't a switch to biomass burning for the production of heat for Cranbrook is simply that the cost of doing so would actually be well in excess of the cost of burning gas to achieve that end. And the green argument has been well brought forward, and that's fair enough. But the fact is that the technology that was expected to come forward to enable biomass to be a green and economically viable source of fuel simply hasn't emerged. And there is now a move afoot, as we know, to get the heat source switched to an energy from waste plant with a pipeline to Cranbrook and Monkton, Monckton in the next few years. So the economics of it is as it is, and actually gas remains, unfortunately, still the most economical way of producing heat for the district heating system. And the other thing to bear in mind is that it wouldn't matter whether we were burning biomass or gold ingots. The price actually that is charged to the consumers in Cranbrook, obviously of which I'm one, is that the price is linked directly to the price of gas and to no other fuel source. So regardless of what was being used to produce the heat, the price that we all pay is directly linked to whatever the gas price is from time to time. So there we are. That's just for information. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Kevin. That's very helpful. At the third attempt, Leader, would you move your minutes, please?
Yes, so just to remind everybody which minutes we're moving, it's the 2nd of March 2022. No, it isn't. It's the 30th of March 2022, minute numbers 189 to 210, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting the minutes in the normal fashion, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 37 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm the minutes are received and noted. Next, move on to Councillor Tom Wright. Tom, minutes of the 3rd of March, in which I do actually have a called minute, which is scrutiny minute number 51 on the 3rd of March. It's been called by Councillor Jess Bailey. Jess.
Thank you. Yes, I've called this minute because I would like to move a recommendation, an amendment to the recommendation. And my concerns arise from John Humphreys and his continued tenure as a councillor, and then the awarding of the honour to him of alderman. So on the 7th of September 2021, this council removed the honour of aldermanship from disgraced former councillor John Humphreys. At that meeting, I asked that the council examine its practices and procedures to avoid this happening again, and it's minuted as the request was made for the council to examine its role in giving an award to Mr. Humphreys in 2019. And then one of the victims of John Humphreys bravely wrote a letter which was read out on his behalf at full council meeting on the 8th of December 2021. It said that John Humphreys was under investigation from 2016 to 2021. This leaves me wondering who else knew and how was he allowed to carry on, as usual, being a councillor at Exmouth and East Devon. Despite these questions and concerns being raised, this council has not examined its role in giving an award to John Humphreys, and more than 6 months has now passed since the aldermanship was removed. The priority and focus of the Scrutiny Committee recommendations should not, in my view, be about whether aldermen get free car parking entitlement or whether aldermen should be invited to civic events. I think it's about one key thing: child protection and safeguarding of children. Both the CPS and the police specifically commented on the fact that John Humphreys held a position of power and standing within the community. People who hold positions of power and authority are more difficult to challenge. It's therefore essential that the council does everything possible to ensure that it does not in any way perpetuate this power and potentially make it more difficult for victims to come forward and seek justice. Simply saying innocent and proven guilty is not enough. Whilst it may not have been possible to prevent John Humphreys being a councillor because he was under investigation, the council was not under any obligation to bestow the honour of alderman on him. Therefore, I would like to recommend that the council commissions an independent report by the LGA or the Centre for Public Scrutiny or other appropriate independent body to be expeditiously brought to Cabinet to provide a clear understanding of how John Humphreys, despite his arrest in 2016, continued to serve as a councillor until May 2019, retained his position as lead member for Exmouth, and went on to be bestowed the honour of alderman by this council in December 2019. In particular, the report should focus on the circumstances of how John Humphreys came to be nominated and bestowed the award of an aldermanship despite being under criminal investigation at the time. And I would suggest that the council puts on hold the remainder of the scrutiny recommendations pending the receipt and consideration of an independent report to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess. I'm not actually sure what what the detail is of what you're actually changing in the recommendation to full council from the committee. Forgive me, I didn't get some advice on that. Is there a specific change? Because there was obviously rather a lot of material there that frankly I haven't assimilated all of the detail of it enough to
Chair, can I help, Chair?
I think that would be helpful. I was actually going to invite you as Chair, Councillor Wright, to pick it up, if you would.
At that meeting, we did discuss the atrocious crimes committed by Councillor or former Councillor Haywood. As you know, I was a member of Cabinet.
Councillor Humphreys. Chair, not Councillor
Sorry, Councillor Humphreys. Sorry. Thank you for that, pointing that out, Leader. And I was certainly unaware of the arrest. It is true to say that at that time I was our representative on the police crime panel, and I never became aware of any incident involving the arrest of Councillor Humphreys, and I'm not sure that, as far as I'm aware, no other councillor did. And I don't know if the chief executive can cast any light on that. But the report, or our workings on that committee, which went on for well over 2 hours, that particular committee meeting, was to see how we could prevent such unfortunate incidents in the future. And that's what that committee set out to do. And I don't know what information anyone had concerning former Councillor Humphreys prior to him leaving the council in 2019. I don't think we need, one thing I am aware of, that when we have public inquiries into things, they do go on for some length of time. And I'd be anxious that we get our procedures in place with regard to appointing aldermen, if indeed we decide to continue to do so, so that we can have a proper system, a recognised system in place prior to 2023, when it would be usual, going back over time, for aldermen and older women to be appointed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Tom. I've got 3 speakers on this. I've got Councillor Miller. Paul.
We owe it to the victims, Chair. I second Councillor Bailey's amendment to these proposals, which I think are in order. So this case of the nomination of John Humphreys to become alderman, I unfortunately have to share that I've recently been made aware by somebody I consider to be a very reliable source that a senior individual within East Devon District Council was officially made aware, whilst Mr Humphreys was a councillor, that Mr Humphreys was being formally investigated by police involving sexual allegations. If we are to continue with this process, there has to be a process where individuals in any way involved in the nomination process are able to intervene to prevent nominating a potentially inappropriate individual. The principle of innocent until proven guilty does not extend to individuals facing serious charges and receiving civic honours at the same time. No institution in its right mind should ever risk offering a civic honour if there's any knowledge within that institution of a serious criminal investigation that could be taking place. I still don't understand why this honour was not suspended when the upcoming trial became public knowledge. I personally requested he be suspended, but this request was rejected. For the victims, I believe they deserve to know whether this process, if reformed, could genuinely guarantee that this could never happen again. If not, we have to scrap the system. An independent external review would be welcome, and victims deserve an independent external investigation, because this council, in its previous report to Scrutiny, in my view, has failed to investigate this internally and address the key concerns. And I'll certainly cooperate what I've been told to such an investigation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. I think you've obviously got a second for the proposal from Councillor Bailey, but I've got to be honest, I really need to get down. Is the proposal an amendment to the recommendations that actually introduces the requirement to have, or the wish to have, an independent review? Is that what we're talking about? Forgive me, there was rather a lot of material to sift out on the hoof. Is that effectively what the recommendation is?
Yes, I sent it to you.
Is that correct? Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Bailey. I think we know what we're talking about now anyway. Councillor Gardner, Kathy.
Thank you, Chair. I am a member of the Scrutiny Committee. However, I was unable to attend the particular meeting we're talking about. I did hear the victim's statement read out at full council. The whole affair was very shocking indeed, and quite appalling. And even more so that this man was made an alderman, even though he was under investigation. It's a process that has always mystified me. I didn't understand how people were appointed, what the criteria were. And I was expecting that we should have an investigation of exactly how that happened, what process was followed, how have people been appointed as aldermen in the past. I have no doubt that many aldermen are, upstanding citizens and have done amazing jobs for the council in the past, and the ones that I know certainly have. So I'm not questioning that, but I think this is an issue we must take seriously. Otherwise, it looks like we're brushing it under the carpet, and I don't think we can stand by and let that happen. And for people just to speak up and say, "Oh, well, I didn't know anything about it, it must have been fine," that's not good enough. We must take this seriously. We must understand the processes that were used in the past in order to make sure that the processes in the future are much better. And we need to do this for the victims, because he was appointed an alderman at a point when he absolutely should not have been. And that reflects very badly on us as a council. So I support Councillor Bailey's proposal. I think we must have somebody look at what happened. The people involved must be spoken to and explain what process was, who was involved, who approved it, how it happened. And if that means that all the aldermen approved at that point have, the process for the appointing all the aldermen to that period have to be included in that review, then so be it. I'm sure all of them would be quite happy with that process, in order to understand what went wrong here. Because I'm absolutely sure something did from what I've heard, and it would be important for us to know what that was. Thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Councillor Wibley, Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Wright said in his response to Councillor Bailey that he doesn't think that other councillors or officers knew anything about Councillor Humphrey and, the sort of process of investigation. I think an investigation by an independent body into our practices as a council, it's the only way to make that thought that he doesn't think that anybody knew. It's the only way to make that a certainty. And I'd argue he's saying about we need to get our procedures in order. How can we get our procedures in order if we don't know what went wrong previously? And I'm talking about not just the alderman thing, but knowing throughout the process of that investigation, while Councillor Humphrey continued as a councillor. The victims need to know, we need to know, and so do the public. There's inevitably a huge number of rumours that float about, and this is an opportunity for former colleagues and the council as a whole to clear their consciences, find out what went wrong, and start again in an atmosphere that's more open and where information is shared to protect people, because that's ultimately what it's about. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Leader, Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief on this, and I'd like to thank Councillor Bailey for bringing this forward, and Councillor Miller for seconding it. Members will recall, and I still find it hard to talk about, the statement read by Councillor Ragg on behalf of one of the victims on the 8th of December 2021. We cannot unhear what was said by that victim. That victim said, in terms, and has not been in any way denied by the relevant people, that he understood that it was the position that Councillor Humphreys had in, what one might call political society in East Devon that obstructed the investigation by the police. Now, members will remember that I said then and did and shared with all members that I would correspond with the Conservatives locally and with the police. So I wrote to the Conservative Party. I addressed it to Councillor Twiss because Councillor Twiss had been effectively the spokesperson on this matter for the Conservatives in East Devon. And his answer to me was the only answer I've ever received. I had asked if he could confirm that there had been an internal inquiry and would he be prepared to share the results of that. And what I got back from Councillor Twist was really like an answer from Father Ted. That is an ecumenical matter. What he said was, this is not a matter for East Devon Conservatives, it's a matter for the Conservative Party. I mean, I like to think I'm not an idiot, but I'm still trying to process that. I'm able to say, having been in contact with the victim who made the statement on the 8th of December 2021 since, the victim hasn't heard a dicky bird from the Conservatives at all, absolutely nothing. I'm also able to confirm, and I think this is even more shocking, that the victim has heard nothing from the police. So when I wrote to the police, I got a holding reply from a deputy chief constable. We're looking into this, etc., etc., etc. But nothing has been done. And here we are now, you know, we're past Easter, aren't we? Flying into spring, the sun is out, the daffodils are nearly gone. And the two leading establishments in this area who were involved in the Humphreys matter have had nothing to say about it other than what a bad man he was. Absolutely nothing. So I think that if I understand Councillor Bailey's suggested amendment recommendation right, I think what she's suggesting is that we look to find a means to commission an external body to look into this for us, and this reports to Cabinet. And of course, at Cabinet, that then comes back through Council as well. But I don't think we can really let this drift anymore. It's not as if we don't know that these things happen in rings as well. You know, is it likely that the gentleman was acting on his own? Well, we don't know at this stage, but I'd like to find out. I think as far as the scrutiny meeting is concerned, it is perfectly true. It did look at the matter of how aldermen are appointed. And I think the CEO did a fantastic historic job looking back at who had been appointed and how over the many years. But the one thing it didn't look at was how Councillor Humphreys had been appointed. Or indeed what, and in many ways, you know, I think that is not the brief that the CEO understood that he had for that report at that meeting. But nevertheless, I do think the council would benefit from undertaking that work now. I also think it's a reputational issue for the council chair, and I know you genuinely care about that a lot. And I think finally, it has to be said, I can't find my copy of Sasha Swire's book at the moment about Sir Hugo Swire, but you can look up John Humphrey's name in the index 4 or 5 times. I mean, they were bezies. They were bezies. Former Councillor Humphreys, great mates with Simon Jupp, the current MP as well. Now, I make absolutely no sort of insinuations around that at all, but if you were in the position of the victim and you knew that your persecutor was bezies with not 1 but 2 MPs representing your town, you'd feel that perhaps your district council might come to your rescue.
Sorry, Councillor Arnott muted then. Was that intentional?
It was a dramatic climax, Chair.
Oh, my apologies. Sorry, we from Yorkshire need those pointing out to us sometimes.
I'll send you a telegram next time. Thank you.
Give me a bit of warning next time. Councillor Bonetta, Jake.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a very brief one in the same sort of light as Councillor Gardner. As a member of Scrutiny Committee, I was, well, at least now, I was unfortunately unable to make that meeting at that time. I don't really want to add too much onto the conversation now that many members have spoken, but I did want to just completely agree with and echo what has been said by many members in support of Councillor Bailey and Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller made the Labour Party's position very clear in that Scrutiny Committee meeting. And I still agree with that. We should I agree with the recommendations that came out of that meeting. However, the fact that we don't have an external investigation, it seems beggars belief. We've got to have someone else looking at this as well as us, because, of course, many of us do have links to it. Many of us don't, but that's besides the point. Something external definitely needs to happen, and we definitely need to put a pause to it and have that investigation before we make any further moves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake. Councillor Armstrong. Megan.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a very brief one, because most people have said what I wanted to say anyway. But I just want to put it on record that I fully support this recommendation, and all of the speakers have said what they've said this evening. I won't say any more than that, because it's something so serious that it really does have to be investigated properly. Not only about ex-councillor Humphrey, but about the way that things progress in the future. They're two separate issues, really, but they're linked. So I really do fully support this, and thanks to Jess and to Councillor Miller for proposing and seconding this. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I've got Councillor Johns. Vicky.
Thank you, Chair. Very short and sweet. I fully, confer with what everybody else has said. I fully agree with Councillor Bailey and Councillor Miller and everybody else. I'm curious as to why this hasn't been done previously anyway. If something like this comes up, surely we've got nothing to hide as a council. And I don't understand why anybody's arguing against having an independent review. As councillors, we are basically paid for by the taxpayer. And if the taxpayer thinks that we're not doing a good job, we should be having an independent review. End of. They should. I don't understand the point in all the discussion about it, to be honest with you. If we've got nothing to hide, which I'm pretty sure the majority of us haven't, then go ahead with the independent review. It gets my vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Councillor Twist. Phil.
Thank you, Ian. Obviously, I've been named. I don't wish to add anything to the information I gave to Councillor Arnott, but I think actually it's Megan that's hit it on the head. This is two quite distinct things. One is, why would anybody in their right minds, as a member of the Conservative Party, having knowledge of offences that John Humphreys had committed, recommend and support him to be an alderman? Now, you will recall from previous instances where I had suggested to previous members of this council it wouldn't be appropriate for them, nothing to do with sexual offences, I might add, to do with something else, that it's more appropriate that they weren't actually members of this council. In other words, if we see something wrong, then we'll deal with it. But you can't deal with something you know nothing about until after the event. So it's two quite separate things. One is the offences that Humphreys has been proven to have committed. And I'll amplify again, why in God's name would we hide? Why would anybody reasonable hide and try and protect a criminal like that? Just doesn't add up. The second thing is, pardon me, if there is to be an investigation, of course we'll cooperate with it, simply because it's the right thing to do. And equally, I am absolutely fed up to the back teeth with political slurs and innuendo, particularly led by Councillor Arnott. If he's got something to say and he has the evidence to back it up, produce it at the appropriate time. All we ever get is innuendo, no evidence whatsoever. There is an expression, but I shan't say it, but it begins with put up, and you'll get the rest of it. So if you've got something to say, show us the evidence and be prepared for the consequences of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Councillor Wright. Tom.
Thank you, Chair. I agree wholeheartedly with most of what has been said, if not all of it this evening. The one thing that I am a little perplexed about is that none of these issues, the idea of an independent external inquiry, were put forward at the scrutiny meeting that discussed it. I also, from very early on in this debate this evening, as Megan, Councillor Armstrong properly pointed out, it is two issues. We were tasked with for the first time, setting out a clear protocol and process if we thought aldermen and alderwomen should still be things that we appoint going forward. I would like to see that part of my minute being accepted, but this council recommends also that we do have an external investigation, totally independent, into the events which led to former councillor Humphreys being appointed an alderman, to make sure that no one was hiding anything. You know my background, Chair. I would personally go out and kneecap anyone I thought was committing the crimes that Councillor Humphreys has quite properly been convicted of. They were atrocious crimes. I was also very impressed, if that's not the wrong word, with the statement of the victim, and totally supported Councillor Agg's excellent and very emotional way she brought that across. So my main point is, no one at that scrutiny committee meeting sought for an external inquiry. Had it been so, I'm convinced it would probably have been put forward as a recommendation. So I have no problem at all with Councillor Bailey's proposition. And I would take note with Councillor Miller now saying he has direct evidence of someone who did know, a senior member of the council, and I would like that to be brought forward to an independent investigation of those events. Now, can you make some sense of that, Chairman, where we can pass some minutes, but add that we now, in addition, want to get this full independent inquiry going forward? Because I do think, as Megan Armstrong did point out, they are two separate issues. One is looking forward, the other is looking at the past. But looking forward, we must take the past into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Tom. I'll take guidance from our senior officers in terms of the wording of how the things might change. Councillor Arnott, Paul.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I don't want to stand in the way of advice from the CEO, but I'll be very quick. And I know it's absolutely established within the Constitution that he's silent on the matter of somebody having the right to response because he's been named. But if you'll indulge me, since Councillor Twiss has named me, I've written this down as a quote for Councillor Twiss. I might even post it to him for Christmas. He said, "Put up or shut up," is what he said. And then if evidence was presented, if somebody was brave enough to come forward with more evidence, what he said was, open quotes, "be prepared for the consequences of that." Now that thuggish approach to this matter is exactly what terrified this young man for 20 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Paul. Mark Williams, please.
Thank you. So I appreciate there are still some councillors who wish to speak, but just in terms of hopefully guiding this debate towards a conclusion, the terms of reference with regard to whether it is an inquiry or whether it is an investigation are very important to determine and agree, because they will define the extent to which the person who is employed by the council to carry out that investigation or that inquiry will establish the remit of what needs to be done. And I think my concern, which I have privately expressed, is the extent to which, do you go back and you look at the statement from one of the victims, which does suggest that there's a history which needs to be investigated here, which I think we all hoped the police would be undertaking. But I hear from the leader that he hasn't had a reply other than a holding reply to the original letter that he sent. So there is clearly an important piece of work to be done if the mood of the council is to have an inquiry or an investigation into the terms of reference. I think also we need to give very careful consideration to who would be an appropriate person to carry that out. And with all due respect to the Local Government Association or the Centre for Public Scrutiny, I think this is out with their territory, and I think would certainly want to have someone who is suitably legally qualified, because everything that will be investigated or inquired into with regard to this and everything that will come out of this will be heavily influenced, if you like, by the legal framework regarding complaints, allegations, investigations, prosecutions, and the process of a prosecution. So for me, those are two very important considerations in this debate. And it follows from that too, that, whether you want to give me, delegated authority to come back with a report to Cabinet with regard to that, that's fine. But I think you also need to be mindful of the fact that, this isn't something, if it's going to be done properly, where you want to put an artificial restraint on the cost of doing it either, I think.
Sorry, thank you very much for that, Mark. I appreciate your guidance, and I think that might in due course be helpful. I may actually move an amendment myself that there's a, we invite you to come back with a report with that, so with any inquiries properly constituted and takes the right form, because it's not something I would claim any expertise in personally either. Councillor Loudon, John.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. The first is following on from what the Chief Executive's just said. I think it is very important that we clarify what it is we're wanting to happen. Is it an investigation? Is it an inquiry? And I think actually getting, as I've learned, getting the terms of reference correct are absolutely centred to all of this. And so I think the points that Mark's just been making, I would certainly second. The other point, Chair, is, and forgive me for raising this, Councillor Wright a minute ago talked about he would personally kneecap someone. I understand that the way in which the sentiment behind what he was saying, but I just would invite Councillor Wright the opportunity just to sort of reflect upon those words. And I'm not having a go at Tom, because I think it was said in the passion of what he was trying to convey. But I just think, given this is going out live to the public, I'm sure he might want to reflect on that phrase. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very
Chair,
much.
may I come back on that? And thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Councillor Loudon John. Like you, I would, what I was trying to convey, that had I been charged with investigating such things as this, as I have been in the past, I would conduct the investigation not with great passion, but with great thoroughness and determination. I suppose it's going back to a bit of jargon. Kneecapping often used to mean to me that you sort of make someone very clearly aware that you're not pleased with them. So I will withdraw that. But all I would say is, in my past career, I would have pursued offences as those committed by former Councillor Humphreys with all my energy, all my commitment, all my expertise to ensure that justice was done. And that's probably a more polite but slightly more long-winded way of expressing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. That's well put, I think, and helpful. Councillor Skinner. Philip.
Thank you. And I'm going to start off by apologising for the fact that I wasn't here on, I think it was December the 8th, to the meeting to hear the young man's words read out by Councillor Ragg. And I wish to goodness I had been there. I can't remember the reason why, but that's that, and that's the past. But what's really important here for me, and listening to the debate, is to stay away from any linkage between being a Conservative and the crimes that were committed by Councillor Humphreys. There's no relationship between one or the other. Who somebody's politics are has got no relationship with a criminal activity, and I'm sure we all agreed upon that. So I'd like to stay away from this sort of punch up of political slurring, slight slurring. Let's keep it mild, keep it calm, and let's focus on what the issues are. And the issue is coming forward that it's the process of which being taken by how the older men and older women are the process that we go through to unite them with their award of whatever that is, and to ensure that those particular policies are looked at, and there's some relatively rigorous look at the councillors that have are put forward for that. And in the time that I've been on East Devon District Council, which has been now getting on for 23 years, I can't remember of all the aldermen that have come and gone. When I mean gone, have passed away in many of them. And I can't think of an exception that any of those aldermen had done a sterling job when they were councillors at East Devon District Council. And that's across the political piece of whichever party, independents and Labour, I'm not sure if there's any Labour, but certainly Liberal Democrats and Conservatives and the like. So lots of good comes from this process, and we've had a slip up. We've had a slip up, and we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. I very much commend Councillor Bailey and Councillor Miller for putting forward what they've done and supporting it, Councillor Miller for seconding that, and I'm very much in support of looking into this and see how we go. And the wise words put by the Chief Executive, really important, and Councillor Loudon, you made that point, really important about whether it's an inquiry or it's an investigation. I'm not sure whether, Chair, you're going to be able to have that debate here this evening. You could be here for an awful long time, but I think it perhaps ought to be something that is taken on board and is perhaps discussed somewhere else. And I'm sure Mark Williams, our Chief Executive, would give us some advice about how we go forward with that and what the guidelines are for in taking that process forward. And certainly the skill required to look at that. I'll agree absolutely with Councillor Arnott. I am rather say upset. I won't say upset is quite the right word, but very disappointed in the fact that Councillor Arnott had written to the police, and I'm assuming some while ago, and he insinuated it was several months ago, and heard nothing in return, and whether the Chief Executive has done that, because you would imagine that there would be some sort of involvement, some sort of more positive of a response to that, rather than we're just looking into it and it just rumbles on and on and on and nobody gets nowhere. So I think principally, I can't see that anybody, perhaps they may, would want to go against the ideas being put forward. And Councillor John spoke about people against it. I don't know that there was anybody against the principles of what's been put forward by Councillor Bailey. I'm very much want to be supporting that. What I want to do is to ensure it doesn't turn into some sort of political procrastination. That's not what it's all about, and it's surely not. And I want to keep it on the process and make sure we don't make this mistake again, and to look at how this came about, and to make sure that when we find out how that is and the outcomes of those that particular process, that we make sure we don't get that wrong again. And that's what's really important here, to try to get right and get our processes right and learn from this experience. And that's how life is. It's a life of learning, and we've made a dire mistake has been made here in some way, and we need to put that right. I'll leave it to that, Chair, and thank you very much for indulging me.
Thank you, Philip. I'm quite consciously letting some people who are more knowledgeable about what's happened in the past of this actually speak more than once. I think that's hopefully helpful. And Councillor Arnott, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I imagine Councillor Bailey might be about to make exactly the same point, but she did say, and she put it extremely well in the preamble to her recommendation. I've got this typed down here. I think she said both the CPS and the police specifically commented on the fact that John Humphreys had held a position of power and standing within the community. Now, my much loved BBC is blamed for creating and sustaining Jimmy Savile, and I'm afraid they're bang to rights on that. And Councillor Humphreys was created and sustained by a political entity within East Devon. So I don't think that should be off the table. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey, Jess, are you able to pull together a sort of a proposal which hopefully from the Chair's point of view might include some reference to the Chief Exec for the technical breakdown of what form an inquiry or investigation might sensibly take to be most effective and appropriate, please? If you're able to include that in your recommendation, I think I'd welcome that.
Well, yes, I wanted to thank the Chief Executive for his intervention there. And I think that he is right that we do need to have a report brought forward to the Cabinet with recommendations and distinctions between an inquiry and an investigation. And I think that that's probably not possible to discuss that this evening. So I guess that my recommendation would be that the council requests that the chief executive provides a report at the earliest opportunity to the cabinet in order to enable an independent investigation or inquiry to understand how John Humphreys, despite his arrest in May 2016, continued to serve as a councillor until May 2019, retained his position as lead member for Exmouth, and went on to be bestowed the honour of an alderman by this council in December 2019. And in particular, the report will focus on the circumstances of how John Humphreys came to be nominated and bestowed the award of aldermanship despite being under criminal investigation at the time. So what I would envisage is that the chief executive could be asked to bring forward that report to the cabinet at the earliest opportunity, which sets out possible terms of reference and evaluates an investigation as opposed to inquiry, so that then the cabinet can decide how that should be taken forward.
Thank you, Jess. Mark, could I just ask, jump procedures a little bit? I'll come back to you in a second, Jake, but do you have enough information to be able to put together, agree with Councillor Bailey, an appropriate brief for a report to Cabinet? Because it does seem as if that's a prerequisite of moving off down any particular line, because it's important that we get this right and it satisfies everybody's reasonable objectives and avoids any possible repetition as well. Can you assist me on that?
Well, what I think I've heard, so I'll just sort of replay that, is that actually the terms of reference are going to be limited in time to the time that went post Humphrey's arrest, and we look into matters following his arrest, which is absolutely clear, I think, in terms of then working through how you would look at the terms of reference, because you've got a point in time. If it is the arrest, you've got a point in time that things can follow through from. I think, and I'm just being frank with you all, my concern is that, what I think I heard when Councillor Ragg read out the letter from the individual who'd been abused by Humphreys was actually, we're looking at conspiracy, possibly involving Freemasonry, dating back over 20 years or so. So for me, that is why it is very important to be very clear about what it is we're being asked to investigate or inquire into. And if it is, from the arrest and the things that flow through from the arrest, I think that is relatively straightforward. And, I appreciate perhaps my report didn't find favour with some, but frankly, a lot of what you need to know is in that report. But there we go. Someone else can look at it and someone else can bring forward another perspective in terms of, the legal framework that sort of dictates matters following someone's arrest, really. So if that's the case, I understand that, and I think I can bring something to Cabinet relatively speedily, looking into how we then progress that. If however other councillors are wanting more, then I think that for me is the more problematic aspect, really.
That's helpful, Mark. Sorry, I'm going to jump around to somebody who's not indicating again. Councillor Bailey, does that satisfy, as you're proposing?
Well,
the change,
I envisaged it from 2016, but I'm open to other councillors. If they want to look further back, then I would invite them to put that forward.
I've got Councillor Bernetta indicating, but so if Jake, if you'd like to speak now, please, if it fits, and it'll give people time to have a little think.
Thank you. All I wanted to say is it's not on that topic, but I think due to the gravity of this matter, I think it's important. I'm going to be calling for a recorded vote on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, in due course, we'll go for a seconder for a recorded vote at that point. I don't think you'll have too much difficulty getting one. But if we could just formally, will there be a seconder, please, for that recorded vote?
Yeah, I will. Councillor Skinner, I'll do that.
Councillor Skinner, good.
No problem.
Okay, so we will have a recorded vote in due course. Councillor Arnott, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think we should give Mark the opportunity to consider the timescale concerned after this. You know, I think doing it on the spot is difficult. 2016 is an obvious starting point. I would have thought, let's say for sake of argument, it's a criminal QC or something who's hired to look into this for us, and that does seem probably like the most appropriate person. From what lots of you know, my best mate is a criminal QC who I won't recommend for this. I'm certain that any preamble to something that starts in 2016 would cover the context going back. I'm sure that would come into it. So if that helps, but I can see Mark has got a very good point. You know, if you're going to look back to the date of Humphrey's birth, you're going to look. It's going to be like War and Peace, isn't it? Really. And of course, I imagine anybody conducting an investigation, the interviews they do will then lead the investigator, and perhaps they may then wish to say, well, actually, it is relevant that X happened in 2010 or X happened in 2003. But certainly, the open access public source documents that person will refer to, and we can, are the transcripts of the trial. Which I would imagine could be simply, cut and pasted in as an appendix as part of a report like this. Just if that's helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more wishes to speak indicated. So does that, on that basis, happens every time, doesn't it? Immediately you say that, a yellow hand goes up. Councillor Wright, Tom. You're muted, Tom. Tom? You're muted, I'm afraid.
Sorry, what I would like to come back to is the minutes. As I did say in my last comments, was that had this been raised at the Scrutiny Committee meeting, it would have been probably passed. So I would still like us to agree the minutes of the way going forward to set up this process, which to look into appointments in the first, but also add Councillor Bailey's recommendation that this investigation inquiry, subject to the Chief Executive's report to Cabinet, be added to it, not to interfere with it, so we can proceed with setting up the process going forward. And this other investigation, because I do know that an investigation or inquiry could certainly take us beyond May of next year, which will mean we'll have no process for appointing aldermen or older women next May. That's all just a practical point. I totally agree with all that's been said, but I think we should keep the two separate going forward for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think actually, bizarrely, our current circumstances of operating virtual meetings with delegated decision-making responsibility, hopefully the Chief Executive is going to confirm my assessment of it, means effectively, we used to have starred minutes and unstarred minutes back in the day, that effectively our approach at the moment renders any minute effectively starred, which means it can be changed, discussed and changed at full council when those minutes are presented. So that would be perfectly proper in terms of including any conclusion from now actually within the minute recommendations from scrutiny would be my reading on that. I'm not seeing, I've checked this with Henry and I'm not seeing Mark disagreeing, so hopefully we'd be happy to do that, which would, I think, satisfy your requirements, Councillor Wright. Would that be correct?
Chair, if I may. Oh, sorry.
Oh, so not my requirements, the requirements of the Scrutiny Committee. I was merely the chair reflecting their wishes, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Henry.
Yes, it was just saying, so that it's not an open season in terms of everything can be debated by council. The resolution element or recommended to senior officers that's already actioned is not capable of being changed. This is a recommendation to council for consideration. So if Councillor Bailey and Councillor Miller want or are happy to include what is recommended from the Scrutiny Committee as an addition, then that's fine.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bailey, are you comfortable with that? It certainly keeps it in play. Gives you something to refer back to as well. It would obviously be minuted within this council meeting minutes as well. You muted, Jess, I'm afraid.
I have to confess, I'm a little bit confused.
But when minutes come forward to council, in the star bit used to be that minutes hadn't actually been decided and could actually be effectively decisions could be changed because the decision hadn't actually been made. Now, where a minute wasn't starred as it came forward to full council for it to be received, to be noted, to be endorsed, adopted, actually wasn't where it wasn't starred. It wasn't capable of being reviewed or changed. But on the other hand, people could make comments on it. The circumstances that we have at the moment, whilst I wouldn't want to see it as open season, does actually mean effectively that where this decision hasn't actually been made, which it hasn't in terms of the recommendations, then actually that this could be incorporated within the recommendations for that committee. I mean, Mark, I'm sorry, I tried to clarify this. I hoped it might make things more straightforward.
So I think what is being said by Councillor Wright and then also by Councillor Bailey and also by yourself, Chair, is if members would look at the bottom of page 52 of the agenda and then running through onto the top of page 53 of the agenda, there are recommendations to full council, so they're here to be adopted tonight or not, as the case may be. What Councillor Wright is saying is he would like recommendations A and G to go forward, and essentially saying there will be an H added, which would be Councillor Bailey's requirement for an investigation inquiry and me bringing back a report to Cabinet. That's, I think, what I'm hearing in terms of what you're saying, Chair, which is the ability for this to be looked at because it's just a recommendation. So it's an unstarred item in old money, if you like, what Councillor Wright is saying, and then also what Councillor Bailey is saying.
Thank you very much. I don't believe it actually detracts from your proposal at all, Jess. In fact, I would think actually precisely the opposite, because it puts it back in the scrutiny framework as well and ensures that what you're seeking in terms of your proposal is not just incorporated in the minutes and action and decisions of this meeting or recommendation of this meeting, it also sits within the scrutiny process where I think it should do. Councillor Miller, I can't say you're looking puzzled and shaking heads.
Well, I'm highly confused, Chair. I thought when we started this debate, the whole idea was we paused all of the recommendations that had come forward. They're not being forgotten, they're being paused whilst we undertake the investigation. So that's how I understood it. That is certainly not to undermine the recommendations come up with by scrutiny, but it's neither Councillor Bailey nor myself are on scrutiny. We couldn't have made any recommendations through that. The point is, let's have the external investigation and then let's revisit those recommendations. That's what I thought was made clear in our speeches, but I might be suffering from some kind of memory loss, Chair. That's what I thought was clear, and that's what I thought I was voting on. Thanks.
I'm not. Perhaps Mark would assist me, but I'm not actually sure what point or what purpose actually staying all the recommendations from scrutiny in there actually serves. It stops, for me, it streamlines it. And if you're prepared to humour me from a constitutional and procedural point of view, I think it actually helps. Mark, could you assist me, please?
Well, I was endeavouring to work through what Councillor Wright was saying and what Councillor Bailey was saying, but I think it needs to then be clear. If Councillor Bailey and Councillor Miller are saying no, they don't want recommendations A and G to go through at the current time, then the amendment is, has to be clear. The amendment has to be that no further action is taken at the current time with regard to recommendations A to G, and that an independent inquiry is held following a report from the Chief Executive to Cabinet, along with the wording that Councillor Bailey has introduced to the meeting.
Okay, so in fact, your aim was actually to negate all of the recommendations from scrutiny of that meeting, A to G. Sorry, I misunderstood that. I thought it was a
well, no. I think that's what you need to check with Councillor Bailey.
Yeah, is that what you want to achieve, Jess, or not? Because I think it might.
My intention was to pause all those other recommendations, but I'm hoping that this process won't be a lengthy one, because I am concerned that actually I think those recommendations do improve the current situation. So my intention was to pause them, not to remove them, not to get rid of them completely, but just to pause them.
Yeah, so all I would say, Chair, is that I just think you need to understand, isn't it? Because the point made by, I've forgotten which councillor made the point now, and I guess if you think about the report that's contained or referred to in the personnel minutes on this agenda, that process took a year to carry out that review. So councillors need to go into this with their eyes open. At the moment, they're going into it with their eyes open in terms of what they think they want, but we've got to come back to you with the cost, with trying to make sure the right person is available to carry out the inquiry, all those types of things fundamentally. So realistically, I don't think it would be proportionate to assume that everything can be done before May next year, say, for argument's sake.
Yes, yeah. Obviously I have a view on this. Councillor Bonetta, Jake.
Thank you, Chair. Just to sort of jump in on a few things that have been said there, I must say, as I said earlier, and apologies for obviously coming back again, I think pausing is completely the right thing to do on these recommendations. It's been mentioned, obviously, the date of May next year, May 2023, for sort of looking at new honorary aldermanship proposals. But at the end of the day, if the external investigation isn't done by then, it isn't done by then. We've got to work with that. If it takes too long past that, it takes too long past that. Tough. It's still paused at that point. I don't think that should necessarily matter, and therefore I fully agree with Jess, Councillor Bailey there, with and actually pausing those recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Tom.
Yes, Chair, and I just want to raise one point. One of the proposals coming forward from that scrutiny committee meeting was whether or not we should have honorary aldermen and alderwomen appointed at all in the future. Now, that was a hung vote. I did not vote because I thought at the time, coming up to my 12 years next year, and I might be one of those who might be affected by it. So in fact, I then did cast a casting vote to maintain the status quo, i.e. to keep the idea of alderman and alderman, but it might be if that council would not want any more aldermen and alderwomen, which means it would take this completely away, and it would stop it interfering with any properly conducted investigation. And I've had experience of inquiries and investigations like this, especially when you've got busy council and things involved. I mean council with a S, and I share I think the implied pessimism from the Chief Executive that a year might be a bit of an ambitious timescale to work to. I've got no strong feelings one way or the other, but I don't think one need necessarily stop the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Councillor Loudon. John.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite clear that when I listened initially to what Councillor Bailey was saying, and then also listening to what Councillor Miller was saying in support of her, I'm quite clear that I was hearing a pausing of A to G within the scrutiny minutes, and then it being supplemented by an investigation report, etc. So that was very much what has been in my mind over, I don't know how long we've been discussing this. I absolutely take the point that the Chief Executive makes around needing to have a little bit of, we need to be a little bit clear in our own minds that any investigation inquiry is not going to be happening just like that. So we need to think about timescales. We clearly need to think about costs. We need to think about remit. And none of this will happen overnight. Now, that said, if the rest of the members present support what Councillor Bailey and Miller have put forward, i.e. pausing A to G plus the starting of a process led by a report by the Chief Executive to Cabinet, then it seems to me at any point during the process here on in, we can revisit any aspect of A to G. We can revisit the whole of A to G if we feel the necessity to do so, because time is not on our side with the report that we're all talking about. So it does seem to me that one doesn't negate the other. And I would encourage you, Chair, perhaps at this point, now we have clarity of what it is that Councillors Bailey and Miller have put forward, that we move to a vote, because I think we all understand the issues and that we've been hearing. And I think we now need to try and get some clarity and determination of what it is we want to do at this point. And I'm getting hungry.
Thank you very much for that, John. I have one more speaker indicating I'm going to take her. Councillor Jackson, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. It was simply a passing comment, really, that the appointment of aldermen as an honorary status is not something that's particularly time critical. So if we don't have a process in place, we simply don't appoint aldermen until we're in a position to do that in a way that we're all comfortable with, and using a process which has been devised from a position of knowledge. So it's not we're never going to do it again, and it's not like we can't catch up again, but I see no harm coming from pausing it until an investigation or an inquiry has been undertaken and concluded. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, noted. Then the first thing I believe we need to do is we need to have a vote on having a recorded vote. We have a proposer and a seconder. So if I could please have all indications with the green tick in favour of a recorded vote or cross against, please.
Hey, Chair, I've got still voting going on. 37 votes in favour, none against.
Thank you very much. That's good. In terms of a recorded vote under current circumstances, please refresh my memory. Do we need to actually go through a register one by one recording the vote there, or can it record them automatically from the screen?
No, I have to go through it, Chair.
Fine. Okay. Can I hand over? Sorry. Can I hand over to you to do that then, please, Sue?
You said that with great enthusiasm, Sue.
So can someone just clarify what members should be voting for or against?
Okay, well, as I understand it now, the proposal put forward by Councillor Bailey and seconded by Councillor Miller is that effectively all the recommendations of the scrutiny meeting on the 3rd of March 2022, A to G on page 52, effectively go into abeyance. But the committee, that there is one recommendation, well, it doesn't come forward, does it? 'Cause either separately or within those minutes, whichever anybody wants to, whether Jess wants to do it, is there is one recommendation comes forward, which is for an inquiry or investigation into the Humphreys affair and post 2016 and his appointment of as an alderman, in the terms of reference and who would perform it, and establishing basically a remit is commissioned as a report for the chief executive to bring to cabinet. Have I got that right, Jess?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Did you get that, Sue?
Yes, I think
Good.
so. Okay. So
over to you, and thank you, Jess.
Okay. So, councillors, if I read out your name, could you just confirm whether you're for what the chair has just elaborated on or against? Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Arnott.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
For.
Councillor Barrow. Councillor Bickley.
For.
Councillor Blakey.
For.
Councillor Bloxham.
For.
Councillor Bonetta.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Bruce. Councillor Chubb. Councillor Chubb. Councillor Coleman.
For.
Councillor Davey.
For.
Councillor Desarum.
For the proposal as set out by the chair. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Dent.
For.
Councillor Faithful.
For.
Councillor Gardner.
For.
Councillor Hartnell.
For.
Councillor Hawkins.
For.
Councillor Haywood.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Hookway.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Johns.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Young. Councillor Kemp.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Key. Councillor Lawrence.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Ledger. I think Councillor Ledger came back in.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Loudon.
For, Sue. Thanks.
Councillor Manley.
For.
Councillor McCollum.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Miller.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Moulding.
For.
Councillor Parr. Councillor Pratt.
For.
Councillor Ranger.
For.
Councillor Rickson.
For.
Councillor Rowland.
For.
Councillor Rylance.
For.
Councillor Skinner.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Thomas.
For.
Councillor Twiss.
Abstain.
Councillor Wibley.
For. Thank you, Sue.
Councillor Woodward.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Ragg. Councillor Chris Wright.
For. Thank you.
Councillor Tom Wright.
For, Sue. Thank you.
Right, I'll just need to tot up the numbers, Chair. Okay, Chair, I've got 41 voting in favour and 1 abstention, Chair.
Thank you very much. So the changes to Councillor Wright's scrutiny minutes are duly made, with the addition, obviously, of the commission of the required report on the form of the inquiry or investigation. What I'd like to do, I believe what I should do now is ask Councillor Wright, finally, I tell you what, this must be the longest set of minutes going, to please bring forward your minutes duly amended.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just go back to the top. Yes, so I formally move the minutes of the Consultative Scrutiny Committee held on the 3rd of March, minutes number 45-254, as amended by this meeting.
Thank you very much. Tom, could I have those please voting in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes duly amended in the normal manner, please?
Okay, Chair, I have 36 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. And on to the next one. Tom, your next
Thank
set
you,
of minutes,
Chair.
please.
I now move the minutes of the extraordinary consultative meeting of Scrutiny Committee held online on the 17th of March 2022. Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes in the normal manner, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 36 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm the minutes are received and noted. Next, I've got Councillor Chamberlain, please. Housing Review Board.
Chair, I think she's absent, isn't she?
I was just going to say, I don't. Yes, she's given apologies, Chair, effectively. So,
do we have a substitute who can effectively move these minutes?
the Vice Chair is Co-op T, who wouldn't be present. So,
could I suggest it's Councillor Taylor? It was Councillor Brenda Taylor at that meeting.
Yes, I was at that meeting.
Is that acceptable, Mark?
Well, normally you just do it from the chair, but it doesn't matter if it's
right. No, well, yeah, okay. Brenda, can I ask you to move the minutes, please?
Yes, I'd like to approve the minutes of the Housing Review Board on the 7th of, when I've got my glasses, 24th of March.
Yeah.
Minutes 29 to 47.
And do you want to move the 7th of April ones at the same time?
Also, yes, also the Housing Review Board on the 7th of April, minutes 45 to 61.
Thank you very much. Can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting both sets of minutes, please?
hey, Chair, I've got 32 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm those minutes are received and noted. Next, we've got Councillor Ledger from a car in Yeovil. If you could move your minutes, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. So I'd like to move the minutes of the Strategic Planning Committee meeting held on the 22nd of February, the 8th of March and the 5th of April. Minutes numbers 76 to 87, 88 to 96 and 97 to 105 respectively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes in the normal manner, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 34 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm these minutes are received and noted. Next, Councillor Wragg, please. Could you move your minutes together?
I think she may have left, Chair.
Right, and the Vice Chair, I think, is Councillor Chamberlain, isn't it?
That's correct, Chair.
Good. Well, it looks like the Chair will move on behalf of the Chair of Planning the minutes held on the give me 2 seconds. Planning on the 16th of February 2022, minutes 101 to 114. Meeting held on the 23rd of February, minutes 115 to 117. And meeting held on the 16th of March, minutes 118 to 130. Perhaps if you could please invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting those minutes, please.
Okay, Chair, I've got 36 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm those minutes are received and noted, and no doubt we can let Eileen know later. Councillor Whibley, your minutes, please.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to propose the council note the minutes of the Licensing and Enforcement Committee held on the 23rd of Feb, minute numbers 20 to 27, and the 13th of April, minute numbers, can't see, 28 to 35.
Lovely, thank you very much. Can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 36 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm those minutes are received and noted. Next, I've got Councillor Hawkins or Councillor Hookway. I'm not sure Councillor Hawkins is here, is he?
I am.
Oh, he is. My apologies, Sam. You've been hiding. Can you move your minutes, please?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to present the minutes of the Audit and Governance Committee meeting held on the 16th of March 2022, minutes numbers 39 to 51.
Thank you very much. Can I invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting these minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, 36 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. And next, I'd like to ask Councillor Thomas to move his minutes, which he will duly do with a new hat on. Minutes of the Personnel Committee held on the 22nd of March 22, minute numbers 32 to 38. Could you please indicate your willingness to vote in favour of receiving and noting those minutes, please?
Okay, Chair, I've got 34 votes in favour.
Just to round, thank you very much. I can confirm those minutes are received and noted. And to round off the minute round, again, it's myself with the minutes of the Standards Committee held on the 12th of April 22, and that's minute numbers 14 to 21. If I could invite members to vote in favour or against receiving and noting those minutes, please.
Okay, Chair, 34 votes in favour.
Thank you very much. I can confirm that the minutes are received and noted. Agenda item 10 is the appointment of independent community representatives on the Housing Review Board. This item's to seek Council's endorsement to the appointment of 2 independent community representatives as co-optees on the Housing Review Board, following interviews on the 6th of April to fill the existing vacancies. The 2 successful individuals are Sarah Clark and Rob Robinson. Could I please invite members to vote in favour or against endorsing those appointments?
Excuse me, Chair, I have my hand up. I just wanted to ask something before the vote.
My apologies, Megan. Sorry, I was taking those as abstentions based on
No, sorry.
your interest declaration. Sorry, my apologies. Can I just declare that, just finish this bit off, and I'll come back to you.
Well, it's about this voting. I just want to ask a question of who are these people, basically. I'd just like to know who they are.
Fair enough. Was there anything in the papers in terms of a small CV for these candidates?
I don't think so. No, I didn't think there was, but I might have overlooked it.
So is there any background information we can provide for Megan, please?
Not at the meeting, Chair. Apologies. I mean, interviews have been held by officers of the Housing Department and the Chair, and I think the Vice Chair. So they've been through a proper recruitment process, as it were, but I don't have any details to hand.
Okay, thank you very much for that. What I will, Megan, sorry, just what I'm happy to do, if it helps, is I'll arrange for a short note of the background for the two individuals to be sent to members, if that's okay. If that covers off the requirements. That would be
helpful, and also for future such appointments as well. I think it's really important to know, even if it's only a couple of sentences, just to say where they're from, and who they are, and their interest in doing this. Yeah, thank you.
No, happy to do that. No problem. We did invite members to vote, didn't they? But we haven't actually finished the voting off. So. No. Members of voting, could we please have the result of the vote, please, Sue?
Okay, I've got 34 votes in favour, and I've got a hand raised from Councillor Jackson. I think
which I've read as an abstention from Councillor Jackson, which hopefully is correct.
An abstention for me.
And from Councillor Hayward as well.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. I can confirm that those appointments are endorsed. And this brings our council meeting to an end. And I'd like to thank everyone, including members of the public, for their attendance, and anyone watching on YouTube who's still watching, 2 hours in. Can I remind members that until Democratic Services team confirms that live streaming and recording has stopped, we can still be seen and heard, and any comments we might make will be recorded.